This episode is brought to you by Galileo FX, the world's top trading bot. Galileo uses advanced algorithms and customizable strategies to enhance efficiency, reduce errors, and operate 24/7, providing a significant advantage over traditional manual trading. Go to GalileoFX.com to learn how you can start automating your trades today. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here of the BlockHash podcast. Today, we have on Anuj, co-founder of STXN, allowing you to build the future of decentralized hybrid apps with technology that is marrying both Web 2 and Web 3. We're going to dive into what that means today. We're going to talk about smart transactions, the importance, the need of them, and why they matter. Anuj, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Before we actually dive in and start talking about that stuff, I'm sure people would love to know a bit more about yourself as well. If you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background, maybe how you ended up in the Web3 world. Everyone's usually got a pretty interesting story anyway. But what kind of led you down this path, being a co-founder of STXN?
I think it was a bit unusual, as you hinted. So I grew up in India, and there, in my late teenagers, I became a monk, like a Buddhist monk. This is why I don't have hair on my head. And you wouldn't think from there to a Web3 person. So after that, after doing that, I was told to leave to go back to society, civilization. And I did the most extreme thing I could do. I moved to New York from there to join Wall Street. And I had a computer science background, so I was working as a financial engineer. And then Wall Street, I was working at Nasdaq. One day going to work, the Occupy Wall Street wouldn't let me get to work because I was supposed to be the bad guy because I work for the Wall Street, right? So I started engaging with them. Like I was like, what did I ever do wrong? Like, why is everybody mad at me? And the people who work with us. And I realized that, this, that, and the other, long story short, basically, global banks and finance and all that, something needs to change. So I asked them, is there an alternative to finance? Because you just cannot shut down finance. And they told me 2011 about Bitcoin. That's the first time I heard about it. And then immediately, I went home, I looked it up, I read the white paper, everything. And then initially, to be honest, didn't make much sense because I was like, okay, it's a great thing, but I don't know how it can replace finance. It's just a coin. Interesting, send money maybe. There was no Ethereum, there was nothing, right? And then over the course of years, as happens, the rabbit hole, I went deep. And the next thing I know, 2014, I left my job. I moved to from New York to France. And then I went completely in and I worked with Ethereum Foundation and others. And basically, that was the beginning. And then through my work, I realized that everybody keeps complaining about blockchains being not usable, being slow, having really small accessibility outside of just their nerds. And I realized that the problem is not that blockchains are slow or fast or the UX is bad. That's a problem. But the deeper problem is that what most folks have access to or touch points that every user has is not nobody interacts with the blockchain as a whole. Everybody interacts transaction wise. Like you send the transaction, receive a transaction. And everything else ultimately comes down to just transactions. Like you do something to get something. That's transactions. And without upgrading the most fundamental, the most basic, the most simplest element of blockchains and internet, which is transactions, it's a bit like trying to upgrade something so massive as L1s and consensus and blockchains. It's great, but we need to start from the basics. So smart transaction asks that question that why don't we go back to the basics? Why not transactions get smarter, which means you can send transactions from any chain to any chain. Simple things like that, but it should be just done by default. And that's smart transactions. Yeah.
Absolutely, and you make a good point there. Like these things should be done by default, and it's that time, right? We're far enough into this space where we need to kind of update the way that these chains are working and that we're processing transactions and how they function. And I want to dive into that more with you as well. But was there any particular inspiration other than that in terms of wanting to co-found STXN? Like anything that kind of like pushed you and wanting to go that direction?
Yeah, definitely. So it was during COVID times, the beginning, that Vlad Zamfir and me, who eventually ended up becoming co-founders of STXN, we were old friends, and we were looking at the MEV problem at that time, where it's basically anybody can send transactions and look at the mempool in Ethereum and other chains too, and that means others can basically take an advantage of that. So if I see you are selling or buying something, I can basically manipulate. Long story short, and I can get ahead of you in some ways. And that was a problem existential at the existential gets in Ethereum. And so we were looking at that, and we realized what the solution to MEV was is that not that we have to overhaul whole consensus, basic structures, but like fundamentally transactions need to just be aware of that MEV can happen. And if somebody tries to MEV it, like my transaction is secure against MEV. So we realized that that needs to be upgraded. The transaction needs to have a version 2.0, and nobody else was working on it. And we realized that it is not just existential, also it is a matter of principle, because ultimately, if that is not the case, crypto will never go beyond the 1% of the world that access to crypto. And so this is why we saw it's clear as daylight that as a business it makes total sense, despite startup, because you can build really performant applications that are secure and that are accessible by everybody, and also you can have it genuinely solve the problems of security, of accessibility, of UX, and all of that.
So let's dive in under the hood a little bit more with smart transactions. I'm sure people will be also curious to what you can do with smart transactions. How do they execute differently, as well as maybe the different type of conditions that can also be set that can affect those. So what can you tell us about some of the mechanics there?
So, under the hood, we have very similar to what folks call a solver network. So, basically, due to MEV, the most common solution that happened was, instead of before, when you send the transaction from your wallet or from your dApp, and then miners or validators receive it, there's nothing in between much happening before. And so, these solvers are kind of like the ones who sit in between you and the validator. They basically interpret your transactions and add extra features. So, for example, in the MEV, they make sure that your transaction is secure. That means if you're trying to get a certain price for a certain asset, somebody cannot just do something to change that lot. And if they do, they will cancel that, something like that. And we realized, hold on, if there could be people who could offer this very useful service, why not have them do other services? So, for example, if you want to send, let's say, subscription service, you want to send one ETH every month or 100 USDC every month to a certain service, or if you want to have a some kind of a extra feature, like you want to send ETH or Solana or whichever coin to somebody, where they on the other side has to have certain kind of IP, like they have to live in a certain country for regulation reasons. So any kind of thing that leads to having these extra features of transactions, that is not possible. So our solvers are programmed in such a way that, based on what the user inputs, and the user inputs in what we usually refer to as intents. So user will just say, okay, I just want to pay for this service and I have this coin. I don't care if the service accepts this coin or not. You convert, you give me the fixed price, you do it, and solvers will do that. So basically, our infrastructure is many ways kind of a one side, the user side is more or less like they will just express intents, and on the other side, the solvers who will interpret the intents. One difference I might have to add to this, what we add is, in our case, one is that the infrastructure is not specific to any chain, so it's cross chain. So you don't have to worry about which chain, which coin. You just say what you need to do, and it will figure out what it does. And the other thing is that, for the intent side of the story, when people say what they want to do, all intents right now are limited to things you can do around financial applications. So you want to long, you want to short, you want to have leverage, you want to this, that. But if you want to build an application like Farcaster, for example, which is not financial, there's not much of an infrastructure available where you could just like express non-financial needs. For example, if you want to say, I want to send a message to somebody, I want to find build a marketplace to do non-financial things, you can't do that. So our solvers and intents are so expressible, you can express non-financial things as well, and solvers will solve it.
Okay, interesting. And then what are some of the functionalities that smart transactions also kind of enable in terms of things like maybe integrating oracles or time travel trading? I've noticed that there's a bunch of different things that they can also do.
So time travel is very key to what we do. So one of the early features that we wanted to embed was, so in blockchains you can do flash loans, which is loans you can do within a certain block. And the idea is that, because every block, every transaction specifically is atomic, so within that atomicity, you can take a loan, And as long as you return the loan before the block ends, you're good to go, because worst case scenario, it will get undone, like everything, as if you never took the loan. So there is no risk. So we wanted to extend that over multiple blocks. So this is something we call time capsule. So basically, you can do any operation that starts from, let's say, block height 100, and you know the operation might take 2 or 3 blocks. So for example, you take a loan, you want to do some speculation, you want to see if you can make some money, and that might take 3, 4, 5, 20 blocks. And you can open these kind of time capsules, and you can say, okay, within these time capsules, I want to do something, and I want to be reversible within that. So you can create this reversible transactions, which is sounds like impossible because blockchains are immutable. So we don't break immutability, but we just enable just those transactions which you mark as kind of temporary to be reversible, not like the entire block, nothing will be changed there. So that's one huge thing. So for security, it's important. Like we had the Bybit hack where somebody was moving crypto from cold to hot wallet. You could do similar things in us, except you will say this is the wallet address, this is the hot wallet address, this is the time period, 8 hours it will take. Within that, do everything temporarily. If any hack is trying to happen, cancel all the operations. So you can do these things like that. Another thing you can do is you can time things. So you can say do a particular operation every few blocks, or do an operation based on Oracle update. So for example, if tomorrow it rains or the price moves or whichever with the Oracle input you choose, based on that, release something, invest in something, change the rate that you have. So you can do these kind of conditional things, and which you can still do in regular blockchains. But the difference is you don't have to keep writing your own smart contract for every kind of logic you want. From the front end, in almost natural language. So we are very inspired by the conversational pattern that ChatGPT has. In a natural language, you will explain what you want to do, and it'll interpret, and the solver's role is to interpret that into what it would mean for it to be codified, and they will make sure that happens.
And then you mentioned some potential use cases earlier, like you mentioned Farcaster and stuff like that. I'm curious if you guys have any other maybe applications or hybrid app examples that you can, highlight as, leveraging smart transactions, or as well as maybe where you think this could go at some point in terms of other applications that could be built.
I mean, one of the key thing that we talk about a lot is hybrid applications, which means applications that do not have to always be fully on chain. Like Farcaster is one example. So, building on that idea, we have currently 2 applications that are live. One is called CleanApp. CleanApp is an application that is probably the fastest way for anybody to tokenize or coin something on chain. So, when you open the app, CleanApp, it opens to the camera app, and you just take a picture of anything. That's it. It's immediately tokenized. So that means there's an imprint of the JPEG on chain, like the regular, like an NFT thing. There's nothing different, but it's the fastest and easiest way to do it. The one that is even more advanced part of cleanup is, one part is okay, you tokenize something, it's now on chain. Another side is creating a real marketplace where somebody else could as well just like it. That's already a demand. Or somebody could put money in it, they want to buy it or trade it. So any kind of interaction. So you have another side of cleanup where anybody who has the cleanup installed, they will get a notification, or they could go to their feed and they could see, okay, somebody just posted this picture of something, and they could then respond by liking. And every interaction from the responder who likes it or it buys anything gets converted to tokens also. So what happens is, what is fundamentally different from any other kind of tokenizing on chain, and there are many like Palm.fun, there's Zora, there are many others, is it is not just enough to be able to tokenize something, but what is also important is to have this both sides of the story. You tokenize something, which is the supply, and creating the demand, which is anybody should be able to reply to it, tweet, retweet, share, like, sell, buy, whatever they want to do. So that is one application, that the first one that we built. We already have close to 300,000 installs in just the last 3 months. We have another application called BlockClock, which is basically a smartwatch. It's an app on your phone, and we will be building an actual watch. So it's something like how Solana has their own phone. We want to have like a smartwatch where you can just one tap, you can tokenize any moment memory that you have. This is why it's a watch. So, for example, something is happening in your life, you can just speak to it or write on it on the mobile phone, and you can basically have the message, the timestamp at the time you did it on chain. So basically, on one tap, you can say tomorrow, I think something will happen, like a prediction market. Or you can, from your phone, using that BlockClock, you can send a message to your friend and you know exactly what time it was sent. So these kinds of kind of a gossip network you can create where anybody can send anything where they can say what when happened. So that is BlockClock. And we are building Vamp.fun, third app, which basically will allow any token community from any chain to migrate to any other chain. By migrate, I mean clone. So let's say you have Mochi on base, and you want to tomorrow you see some say Beta chain or some chain is ripping, like the liquidity is coming in, the TVL is a lot, and you want to tap onto the liquidity. So you can use one click, and your entire community with the whole holder base will be copied, not moved, copied to this new chain that you wanted, and immediately get access to the liquidity of this other chain. So this allows any token community to hop from chain to chain. And now we are starting with token community, but we want to do it for any token. So any token project should not have to worry about where which chain they are based on. So this is just the beginning. But what we are will doing in the next phase is making the SDK more open source, more public. We will have a whole like hackathons and everything, so anybody can build. These were the initial apps we did to explore our infrastructure, get to the point where it's mature, and then to be the community that will do it.
Yeah, block clock in the form of a smartwatch is very interesting. I haven't heard of that before. It is kind of similar to like the idea of like Solana going with like their smartphone. Um, but no, this is cool. Is this something that's like a proof of concept at the moment, or something you want to move to production at some point relatively soon, or is that what stage is that?
We want to, so right now it's a proof of a concept. We want to move to production. So we will be like in a like this summer, it'll be a full-fledged product. So right now we have our own test net, and we're still not on mainnet. So what we want to do is we are pending some audits that we will do. So on all of the infrastructure, we'll have an audit, and then we'll go on mainnet.
That's cool. Well, I need a new watch, so if that comes out, this summer, let me know so I can get one.
Definitely.
um, you,
Swiss
yeah.
watch designer who is building with us.
Oh, very
So it'll
cool.
look nice and clean and all that. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Another thing I want to ask you about is I saw you wrote an article recently about how smart transactions might help onboard, the next billion users through scalable applications, dApps. I'm curious how, if you think, like L2s are well intentioned or maybe misguided, because there's a lot of them in the space. There's like a ton of oversaturation of L2s and rollups. And I feel like, maybe it's missing the mark too much. And curious if you think that the solution, it's more about the transaction than it is, the blockchain in this case.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a lot of debate around L2 is good or not. And then also debate less about which L1. But what in some ways transcends the whole L1 with this L1 versus that L1, Solana, Bera, Monad, this, and or this L2 versus L1 or not, is ultimately it's all about transactions. And that is just like nobody can debate that it's not transactions like L1 and not even crypto, even on the internet, everything like we're having a conversation online, it's transactions back and forth, right? So as long as we are able to make transactions do exactly, transactions should work for people. People shouldn't work for transactions, which means simple things like when somebody is trying to send a transaction, they shouldn't have to be even knowledgeable about which L1 should I choose, which L2 should I choose, is this, it should all be just about transactions. So if I want to do something, that is the intent part. It is for the solver to figure out which L2, which L1 it is good to interact with, which it should work with. It should not be. So we also have another unit which is called orchestrator, whose job is to basically figure out which chain, which L1 and L2 to interact with. So one of the things that we are obsessed with when we talk about the billion users is that it's really the, it's not just that the infrastructure is not good enough, like its throughput is still lacking, some chains are trying to do it, of course, or the UX is bad, but most importantly, you don't even have the kind of apps that you need to scale crypto from a user base. So, simple example: if today Ethereum went down versus something much more centralized as say WhatsApp went down, people won't even know Ethereum went down. Most people in the world, but if they won't even realize it's down. But if WhatsApp went down, it will be a crisis kind of like people will be like, oh my god, what happened? Not that they're great tech in terms of decentralization. And this is where there are two sides of decentralization. One is how decentralized is your tech stack. Ethereum is way more decentralized than WhatsApp. Another is how decentralized is your user base. WhatsApp is way more decentralized in its user base than Ethereum, because Ethereum, most people who are in Ethereum already have capital and they want to make more capital. So we have to move from this narrative of crypto as investment to crypto as inclusion. And unless that happens, unless somebody could build apps like WhatsApp or like Uber or like Airbnb, but in a decentralized backend, then the front end that is decentralized, which not front end, the user base that is decentralized of Uber and all these things, which is, there's no doubt about it, that can be replicated. So this is why really what we need is to attract different kinds of apps to be built. And so that would mean transactions has to be, from a tech perspective, has to lend itself to be able to build different apps. So in our case, if somebody wants to build a Uber, Airbnb, what's an Uber? Uber is basically one side I say I have a cab that is available, another side somebody says I want a cab. It's not different from I have USDC, I want to sell. You have Solana, you want to sell. And we find a match. So, this kind of a coincidence of ones, which is, for example, CowSwap is based on, we like to think of what we are doing as coincidence of real ones. It's like, because most people don't want USDC and Solana. They want I have a cab and you do not, but you want. So, as long as you can tokenize the my demand of wanting a cab and your offer of offering a cab, once it's tokenized, the match can happen on chain, but the tokenization can happen from your phone using a local app for that matter. And that is a hybrid approach of it. So through the angle of hybridization, the question is no longer whether it's on chain or off chain, but it's a hybrid solution. The question is no longer if it is decentralized on the back end or decentralized on the user base. It's a hybrid approach. So hybridization is the kind of great meta that we have realized that can really bring next billion users to crypto, because at the end of it, most apps are a marketplace. And what's a marketplace? It's a matching engine, which blockchains do so well already. It just needs to get over its initial obsession about trying to work on throughput or UX and really embracing this hybrid approach.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, and I love this idea of hybrid applications. There's this growing frustration in the space that I've noticed with a lot of people, and it's like, where are the decentralized applications that are easy to use? Like, where's the decentralized Uber today? Where's the decentralized DoorDash? Where's the decentralized, this and that? Like, why are we not, developing these things out? And sure, there's many reasons, and there's the App Store and Google Play, and compatibility with the phone. But at the same time, it's like the whole transaction process is also incredibly complicated, and UI and UX is incredibly complicated. Um, and I think you're hitting something really key here that's going to really affect how many users actually get into this space and want to use these kinds of applications. And I think these hybrid apps make a really good case for making that possible. So I'm glad you guys are working on that. It's solving something it should be something simple to solve, but is actually a huge barrier to entry for just about everybody trying to get into Web3.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, there's also a kind of a um, limitation in imagination. It's not just technically it's difficult to do. Yes, it is, but it's also we can't even imagine these things. So if somebody, I mean, now it's changing a little bit, as you said, but even I would say 2 3 years ago, if you would even ask like why don't we make these things like that, most people in crypto would be like, but why? Like it's not a perp, it's not a trading, it's not like, why would you do this? This is not. So and the ironic and the tragic part of it is that both for business it's bad, because when you have 1% of the world on chain, how much business can you make? It's not really a lot. But also From a principal perspective, when Ethereum, for example, started, the initial brand of Ethereum was World Computer. And they had this thing called Mist browser, which would have apps like just like App Store you have on Android or iPhone. And that it is so has been lost that image that so many people who I talk to now who have been onboarded to crypto in the last 5 6 years don't even know that ever existed that vision. Like when I tell them what if I say as a joke like we are bringing Mist browser back, they're like, "What is this browser? Something like a Chrome?" I'm like, no, it was like a world computer browser from Ethereum. They're like, really? So it's that because Bitcoin in many ways started with a single use case. We can send and receive money, right? And there's a great use case. And then Ethereum said, and there were many variations like Namecoin, this, that, do it like every other blockchain has its own one use case. Ethereum said, we can just general purpose blockchain. So we don't have to be specific. So you can create your Namecoin, Bitcoin, XYZ coin you want based on the apps that you want. But then for the first 2 3 years, people tried and it was not ready at all. The tech, nobody could do it. And then DeFi came and it was really successful. And then immediately people thought, you know what, just pretend as if never happened. All those conversations. And the thing is that one of the bad, incorrect ways of looking at the solution of this is not like I always resist the thing that we are not building non DeFi or DeFi apps, not at all. Because at the end of it, every app is some sort of a DeFi app. Why? Because unless an app is financially successful, no matter how non like WhatsApp, it's financially successful. Like it's not it you don't think of it as trading app. So my point is that instead of thinking of DeFi versus non-DeFi, we should just think of hybrid. And again, the idea is that instead of just on-chain, off-chain, hybrid, DeFi and non-DeFi, hybrid. And this hybridization approach is, I think, like staying in the middle ground, I think is really key to success, where you are flexible enough to go both ways. Because I mean, in life, when you want to build something that is lasting, it is never just one thing. It's always a mix of different things.
I 100% agree. And Ethereum was supposed to be like this decentralized operating system. It was supposed to be that backbone, and it had those early aspirations. And you're right, DeFi, NFTs, these things got so popular, meme coins, that it kind of just took over the whole ethos of the chain. And now Ethereum is kind of competing in a realm with other chains out there like Solana, Cardano, et cetera, that are much fundamentally better at handling those financial applications. And those are great. Like I have nothing against them at all, but like in terms of what Ethereum is supposed to be and building out this, um, you know, operating system ecosystem for applications and focusing on these technical aspects to build out what we're talking about right now, it definitely has very much gotten away from that. And I think that's why Ethereum has actually struggled quite a bit today, and why there are so many rollups and L2s and different ways to try and scale the chain. It's like they're running in the opposite direction of what they should be doing.
Yeah, exactly. Because the thing is, it's again another metaphor I use. It's you need to build more houses, but everybody's obsessed about what is the best brick, and people are experimenting, innovating on the best brick in the world, like best cement technology, brick technology. Somebody says, okay, there's another way of doing some concrete or whatever, but nobody's thinking, oh, you know what, let's step back. It was supposed to be about building houses, because what's the point of having the best building material if nobody's building a house or a bridge or something that really has a purpose in life? And so this is why when people talk endlessly about L2, L1, this, that, and the other, I'm like, but that's means to the end. The end is people of the world need decentralization, because there is a like the markets are not always efficient, and decentralization, one of the promises, you could create incredibly performant markets. Let's just do that, and not just markets to trade currencies and money, but we cannot trade currencies and money be the backbone of something that is actually useful in everyday life. And that is completely compatible. This is again the hybrid approach. Like I again stress the same thing, that it is not that tokenization, memification, all that is good or bad versus boring, useful tech. Hybrid is the solution. Like yes to tokenization, memification, yes to useful apps who have tokenization as its backbone. So you get best of both the worlds. And I think we have tried to, and throughout history, whenever we try to go in any extreme, it doesn't work. The solution is really the best of both the worlds, which is hybridization. And so, I mean, imagine an Instagram built on or a WhatsApp, where basically anybody get any likes or something that you have actually happen to be liquid. Which, for example, now is happening. It's much slower rate. You have, like, for the last couple of years, Mirror and Zora and many where you can post content and get some cash out, but still you don't see them considered to be as high esteem as some of the DeFi apps, because DeFi seems more directly, I can just see money being printed, but there I don't see. And that's a failure of how it has been designing these kinds of infrastructure, these kind of apps. It's not a sign that these apps are not useful, because if it is useful, people will use and there will be money to be made.
Exactly. And they've created so many applications that are focused on, chasing money and profit. And it's turned into almost gambling in some aspects too. It's like, are we a giant casino or are we building something useful? Um, but those are things to debate. And again, there's good sides to the financial side of the space as well. But again, you make some good points. We've kind of strayed away from some of these, foundations. We're supposed to be building houses, right? Not just trying to build the best bricks. And it's like, where are the houses? I want to ask you guys a little bit about your roadmap as well, because I'm curious maybe what you guys have planned for the rest of this year for STXN. If you guys have any important milestones or updates that people should be aware of, as well as maybe any events you guys might be attending or conferences, engagements. So
So
what's up?
right now we're in the middle of so we did a seed round 2 years ago, had we seeded our round, and now we are doing a seed extension. And we're on the closing phase of seed extension that we are doing now. And next week we're in Dubai for the token 2049. And then I'm based in south of France. So I'll be here for the ETH because I just here on the corner. We'll attend ETH Berlin. But in the summer, we will go live on the mainnet, like post audit with our app store, hybrid app store, where it will come with SDK, the developer experience, the regular stuff, where anybody could build really scalable applications with very concrete elements of being able to use the tokens in the ways people are used to doing in DeFi. At the same time, those same tokens supporting the infrastructure for applications that are actually useful, like marketplaces, or the kind of examples we are talking about. So that's starting from summer. And that's the rest of the year. What we have is we have built the basic infrastructure and the basic apps to exactly test out our hypothesis of how to scale applications. And we know it works. And now it's a matter of putting out getting the audit, putting it in the mainnet, and actually getting adoption, because we have user adoption. We have over almost 600,000 users on our testnet itself that use the apps that we have. Now it's our time to go mainnet and work with other developers to build apps on us. So that's the rest of the year. So by end of this year, we should have our hybrid app store on mainnet with most apps not built by us, and the apps that would be really hybrid, that nobody should be able to have a clear answer. Is it financial, non-financial? It's both. It's mega financial, degen like, and it's mega useful, just like any normal, like traditional apps are.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you guys got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. Mainnet, the hybrid app store, the smartwatch. Keep me up to date on everything. I think these would be great as well to talk about here in the near future, maybe in a part two episode as well, since you guys are doing so much.
That's true. That's true. Because it's both side of the story. Like the main net and the SDK, everything is for the programmers, developer, other companies. The smartwatch is for the retail people, because we want people to come and use those apps really. And the reason it's a smartwatch more than a phone is because watches have the unique thing of showing the time and securing time. And if you can secure time, then you can build some of the most scalable financial applications, because ultimately all financial operation is basically a bet on time. Like you said, long or short, everything is about time. So this is why, and in kind of a joke way, Nakamoto used to call blockchain time chain. So what better than to build on the time chain and actually watch, because watches are, part of the time chain anyways.
Absolutely. It's almost like you're paying homage to Satoshi in kind of a way. But it's also really cool for retail users because they can kind of like feel and touch something that's, physical and not something that's completely meta, like most things are in this space. So it kind of gives a little bit of a real world feel to it too. So that's really cool. But yeah, keep me updated on all this stuff. I think people would love to also kind of see these grow and what you guys are doing once they come out, and maybe where they take you guys. But appreciate the time, man. This has been a really good episode, good conversation.
A last thing I will just add is something unique to us when we go to conferences is we make sure that the taxi drivers or the people who work at the bar and the conference places to onboard them to crypto, and we use our apps, and it's been tremendously successful because everywhere we go, folks are like in Denver, we were there. Folks were really scared. Oh, it's an investment, it's a scam, and it's easier to get scammed in crypto and difficult to use crypto. We want to turn it around. We want to make it difficult to get scammed, easier to use crypto, and we have been tremendously successful at that. And we just want to carry on that train.
That's good, man. Yeah, that's good that you guys are doing that as well. But keep me posted on everything and let me know how these conferences are going. You said you're going to Token 2049 as well. I'm sure that'll be pretty lively. I believe it's in Dubai, right?
Yes, it's in Dubai next week.
Excellent. Well, have fun with that. And where can people go to learn a bit more about STXN smart transactions? Would you send them to the website, socials? Do you guys have a community?
So yeah, we have the Twitter STXN_IO. My handle is I'll share it with you. You can share with, and we have a Telegram channel as well, just for just discussing and ideas and stuff. So otherwise, just like anytime my DMs are open, anybody can ping me. I'm always happy to talk to people about STXN and transaction and all that stuff. So and the website is stxn.io. STXN.io usually has all the links to go to all these places.
Sounds great, man. Anuj, appreciate the time. Again, really good conversation. Thanks for sharing about STXN and smart transactions and what you guys are working on. And let's keep in touch.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Lovely talking to you.